Mary Clarence, like Clarence Williams III from the Mod Squad?
Mary is in deference to our Holy Mother. The Clarence is in honor of St. Clarence of Concordia. There are 3 vows every nun must accept. The vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and the vow of chastity.
I'm out of here with that. Oh, man.
I think it's necessary to...
Good afternoon, sisters. I apologize for my tardiness. I would like you to welcome a new member to our house, Sister Mary Clarence. Mary Clarence comes to us from a somewhat progressive convent. However, she is eager to embrace a more disciplined life, and I am sure will make every effort to conform to our ways.
I'll do my best.
Would you like to be seated?
Thank you.
Yes, Mary Patrick.
Reverend Mother, on behalf of all the sisters here at St. Catherine's, I'd like to offer a great big hi there and hello to Sister Mary Clarence. Hi. And as part of the welcome, I thought that maybe our new sister could offer today's blessing.
Well, that is very thoughtful of you, Mary Patrick, but I really...
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Sure. Okay. Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts which we're about to receive. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of no food, I will fear no hunger. We want you to give us this day our daily bread, and to the republic for which it stands. And by the power invested in me, I pronounce us ready to eat. Amen.
Amen.
Be seated.
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Sounds like a job. Verbal diorama. She watches all the movies, from comedy to drama. From the top roll sound, and don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end, and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtakes. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, episode 295, Sister Act. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't, that blends in like nuns in a casino. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, whether you're a brand new listener to this podcast, and welcome back, regular returning listeners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen to this podcast. I am, as always, so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Sister Act. And if you are a regular returning listener, thank you so much for continuing to listen to and support this podcast. This podcast has been going for over 6 years now and over 290 episodes. And that would not have happened without your continued support. So thank you so much. It genuinely means so much. And I cannot believe the 300th episode of Verbal Diorama is right around the corner. The last episode that I did was on Sonic the Hedgehog. And really the only similarity between that movie and this is that they're both kind of fish out of water comedies, and they both start with an S. And that's really the only way to link Sonic the Hedgehog with Sister Act. Now, when I was a kid, I saw Sister Act for the first time, and I fell in love, genuinely, I'm not joking, with the idea of becoming a nun. Now, obviously, I didn't really understand the whole murder subplot, because to me, this was a story about a fabulous singer who becomes a nun and has a great time singing. I love the soundtrack, and I listened to it constantly when I was a child. Bear in mind as well, my family weren't Catholic. I'd never met a nun, and the only nuns in my town taught at the local Catholic school. But I decided I really wanted to be a nun because it looked fun. And obviously that idea was quashed pretty quickly when my parents explained that nun life isn't all fun trips to Reno and singing gospel music. But this movie is fun trips to Reno and singing gospel music with a little bit of mild peril on the side. So Here's the trailer for Sister Act.
Lounge singer Deloris van Cartier always wanted to be a star performer.
Nothing you can say can tear me away from my God.
But tonight, she's going to become a star witness.
Hey, is there a problem?
I've never seen anybody killed before.
If you testify, I'm gonna put you in the last place on earth that Vince would ever look for you.
She's an ideal prospect for rehabilitation.
Absolutely not. That is not a person you can hide. That is a conspicuous person designed to stick out.
Look at me. I'm a penguin.
I'd like to offer a great big hi there and hello to Sister Mary Clarence.
This stuff is terrible. It tastes like...
There are 3 vows every nun must accept. The vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and the vow of chastity.
I am out of here.
Hey, sister, we expecting any more of your friends? This turns into a nun's bar. I'm out of here.
There's got to be something around here that I can do that's not going to chip my nails or annoy anybody.
You will join the choir.
The choir?
We're terrible.
This is going to be hell.
Tell me about it.
We can rock this place.
I love him, I love him.
What if I forget the words?
You're going to go straight to hell.
We could cut a demo.
You're a pioneer.
She ain't no nun.
You have corrupted the entire choir.
I was thinking more like Vegas, you know, get some butts in the seats.
I'd rather sing than do anything.
It's better than ice cream.
It's better than springtime.
Better than sex. No, I've heard.
Sister Act.
We're always going to be together.
That's what Diana Ross said.
Reno lounge singer Deloris van Cartier is embroiled in an affair with married mobster Vince LaRocca. After witnessing Vince murder an informant, Deloris runs to the police. Lieutenant Eddie Salve decides that Deloris needs to go into witness protection and places her at St. Catherine's Convent in California, where she will live as a nun until her safety is guaranteed. Deloris, now Sister Mary Clarence, butts heads with the traditional Reverend Mother, who assigns her to direct the church's seemingly hopeless choir. After several rehearsals where she brings the best out of several nuns, the choir debuts both a traditional hymn and a gospel-influenced version. While the Reverend Mother is irate, the Monsignor is delighted. Over time, the church's congregation grows and the nuns begin to involve themselves in the community more frequently. But with Vince's trial approaching, he becomes more desperate to find Deloris and puts a bounty on her head, leading to a corrupt officer in Salve's department telling Vince where she is. Let's run through the cast. We have Whoopi Goldberg as Deloris van Cartier, aka Sister Mary Clarence, Maggie Smith as Reverend Mother, Kathy Najimy as Sister Mary Patrick, Wendy McKenna as Sister Mary Robert, Mary Wicks as Sister Mary Lazarus, Harvey Keitel as Vince LaRocca, Bill Nunn as Lieutenant Eddie Salve, and Joseph Marr as Monsignor O'Hara. Sister Act was written by Joseph Howard and was directed by Emile Ardolino. The humble Catholic nun is more prolific on screen than you might think. Sister Act is the obvious choice, along with, obviously, The Sound of Music. But let's just run through a couple of nun-based movies. There's also Nuns on the Run from 1990, The Nun's Story from 1959, The Bells of St. Mary's from 1945, Heaven Knows Mr. Allison from 1957, Black Narcissus from 1947, and if you want something a bit less wholesome, what about The Nun from 2018 and its sequel, The Nun 2 from 2023? Also coming out in 2023, the Kate Blanchett drama The New Boy, Deliver Us and Sister Death. In 2024, we had Immaculate and The First Omen. There's none cinema likes more than nuns. I am just waiting for the MCU to introduce a nun superhero. The sisters who looked after Matt Murdock as a child don't count. So the idea for Sister Act started, like all good ideas do, with drag. Writer Paul Rudnick, and yes, I realise that's not the name at the top, but I'm going to be coming to that, he was trying to come up with an idea for a screenplay in the late 80s and kept thinking about drag. Specifically, why men dressing up as women was funnier than women dressing up as men. Think of Some Like It Hot, the smart, socially aware, gender-swapping comedy of the 50s, starring Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, and Barbara Stanwyck's Oscar-nominated role in Ball of Fire. So we started to think of the funniest disguise for a woman, and then, blessed with some wholly divine imagination, his thoughts turned to nuns, and how nuns are represented in media, usually quiet and heavily committed to their faith, but also as dictatorial, sexually repressed and scary. His words, not mine. He called this script Sister Act. He took Sister Act to producer Scott Rudin, and together they agreed there was one actor who they wanted for the main part. She was one of the biggest comedy actors of the 80s, had signed a 3-picture deal with Disney to star in movies produced by its new Touchstone Pictures division. She set up her own production company with Bonnie Bruckheimer, the ex-wife of Jerry Bruckheimer. I'm not talking about Whoopi Goldberg. I'm talking about Bette Midler. She'd starred in Ruthless People and Outrageous Fortune, and her production company was based at Disney. So Scott Rudin set up a meeting in New York between him, Paul Rudnick, and one of the studio executives. Rudnick pitched Sister Act, and a deal was struck incredibly quickly. He wrote a 2-page treatment stating that Sister Act was to be a satire of sugar family perennials like The Sound of Music, The Singing Nun, The Flying Nun, The Trouble with Angels, and its sequel Where Angels Go, Trouble Follows. Basically, any mainstream nun movies with older nuns offering their wisdom to younger guitar-strumming rebel nuns. Sister Act's heroine, Terry Van Cartier, would be a pop singer, she would be sexy, she would wear sequins, and she would take refuge in a prissy Catholic convent, converting the nuns to her way of thinking. And in a meeting with Disney executives at Disney HQ, everyone was praising Sister Act, eager to get it made as soon as possible, agreeing that Bette Midler would be perfect, and that they all love nuns, because who doesn't love nuns? After his return to New York, Rudnick finished the first draft. There were questions, though, once he turned it in. Now that Bette Midler was thinking about playing the part, the film could turn into a full-fledged musical, which was great because singing nuns are better than mute nuns. But what should she sing? Original songs or go with the classics? Terry was a showgirl and feels trapped in the convent. Could she sneak some of the nuns out to a drive-in movie, somewhere a bit less nun-like, like a bar or a brothel? Could they get some product placement in there for McDonald's? Could the nuns drink or take drugs for comedy purposes? How about showing sex? It makes sense that Terry's imposed chastity would be a source of humour, but what about women who've taken a vow of celibacy? And what if the nuns were so sexy that a male character might start to fancy one of them? But all these questions and the potential answers started to cause a concern for Bette Midler. She worried about her image. Playing a nun was bad enough, but a naughty nun was something else. Clearly, they needed intense research on convent life, and a year into the project, it was suggested that Rudnick do exactly that, proper research at a convent. He ended up at the Abbey of Regina Laudis in Bethlehem, Connecticut, the home of former actress Deloris Hart, who had debuted starring opposite Elvis Presley in Loving You in 1957, starred in 10 films in 5 years, including another with Elvis, and then, after meeting Pope John XXII while making 1961's Francis of Assisi in Rome, Hart left Hollywood and her fiancé Don Robinson in 1963 to become a nun, taking her final vows in 1970. A documentary film about Hart's life, God is the Bigger Elvis, was a nominee for the 2012 Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Subject. Hart attended the 2012 Academy Awards for the documentary, her first red carpet Oscar event since 1959. Mother Deloris Hart is currently 86 and the only nun who is a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Rudnick was assigned private quarters in the rural old buildings of the Abbey of Regina Laudis, nestled in woods and pastures. Regina Laudis was a cloistered order, and you couldn't just call up nuns for random conversation. Since they received no funding from the Vatican, they supported themselves by running a farm, a dairy, a pottery studio, and a small gift shop selling ceramics, organic skin creams, greetings cards, and their own CD titled Virgin Martyrs. The Regina Laudis nuns would pray regularly and attend 8 services a day. Rudnick spent 2 days with the nuns, attending prayer services and briefly talking to the Mother Superior, who was told he was researching a novel about a woman seeking a more prayerful life within convent walls, rather than the actual plot of Sister Act and all the sinful behaviour contained within. Life at Regina Laudis was a life that was slowly becoming extinct in America. Convents and monasteries were closing and being sold off, and those that remained had an average age of a nun well past retirement age. In the early 20th century, a young woman was expected to get married, and her employment options were limited, so becoming a nun could actually be a route to independence. Post the feminist age, the options open to women at home and the workplace were much greater. Many Catholic orders attempted to modernise their missions, including the traditional habit. The point of a habit wasn't to stand out, it was to stay humble. After the Second Vatican Council, between 1962 and 1965, which aimed at revolutionising the Christian faith, adapting church practices to new circumstances, and fostering dialogue and understanding between Catholics and other Christian denominations and religions, the Council produced 16 documents, including constitutions, decrees, and declarations that addressed various aspects of church life and its relationship with the world. This included allowing Mass to be spoken in local languages instead of Latin, promoting peace and justice through addressing social and political issues, and promoting dialogue and understanding between all faiths. Following this, many religious orders re-evaluated their missions and dress, leading to some abandoning traditional habits and allowing nuns to wear modest everyday clothing. However, some religious orders do still insist on traditional habits. Paul Rudnick would leave the convent after a couple of days and return to New York, reading a 1985 non-fiction book on the way home about how the cloistered life of devout faith was a sanctuary for gay women, despite how their sexuality intersected with their vocations. Many had turned to becoming nuns in order to live freely, but the Catholic Church caught on and would separate lesbian couples in convents. The book is called Lesbian Nuns Breaking Silence by Rosemary Kerb and Nancy Manahan and contains 51 accounts of lesbian nuns and ex-nuns. It's apparently a very good book. Rudnick shared his experiences with the Sisters of Regina Laudis at his next meeting with Disney and wrote a few more drafts until his contract expired and Disney chose not to renew it, instead hiring Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr., the writing team behind Top Gun, to change the locales and put the heroine in more jeopardy. Bette Midler's fears of her public image being tarnished by playing a nun, as well as not getting her choice of director, she wanted Pedro Almodovar, led to her choosing to back out the project, and Disney put it on hold while they looked for a new lead. Cher, Tracy Ullman, and Madonna were all considered. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her role in Ghost, and her profile in Hollywood received a boost. Producer Scott Rudin had worked with her before and suggested her for the lead role, offering her $2 million to play the lead. Scott Rudin had also worked with Emile Ardolino before on his Oscar-winning documentary about Jacques d'Amboise' He Makes Me Feel Like Dancing. His most famous movie at that point was Dirty Dancing, and he'd worked for Disney previously on Three Men and a Little Lady. Once Goldberg was on board, Disney asked Rudnick to return to the project, mostly because Cash and Epps' script wasn't great, and Goldberg requested the character's name be changed from Terry Van Cartier to Deloris Van Cartier. Sadly not after the inspirational nun who Rudnick had tried to find in that convent, just because she liked the name Dolores. The script called for a cast of supporting nuns of all ages and sizes, and all the women who auditioned were asked to prepare a song. The film's musical director was Mark Shaman, who had not only worked with Bette Midler for years, he was admired for his many film scores, from Beaches to When Harry Met Sally through to Misery and City Slickers. Later, he wrote the score for Hairspray. To audition for the many singing nun roles, Shaman brought with him dozens of veteran Broadway, cabaret, and recording artists, including Mary Wicks, who had starred opposite Bing Crosby in White Christmas as Sister Mary Lazarus. Wicks would pass 3 years after Sister Act's release. Shaman also brought in award-winning Broadway performer Susan Johnson, who'd end up as Choir Nun No. 6. The supporting cast would be rounded out by Kathy Najimy as Sister Mary Patrick, newcomer Wendy McKenna as novitiate Sister Mary Robert, and double Academy Award winner Maggie Smith as the Reverend Mother. The script was under near constant rewrites, with Rudnick's original idea becoming more watered down, with more emphasis on comedy because Whoopi Goldberg was a comedian first and foremost, and the fish-out-of-water comedy suited her. They wanted less sex, more friendship montages, less drugs, more Deloris teaching the nuns about life and the nuns teaching her in return. Even the police liaison officer love interest was watered down, and it would be completely removed by the finished film release. Dolores' married lover Vince would be played by Harvey Keitel, but Disney spent ages deadlocked over the casting of Lieutenant Eddie Salve as to whether the character should be white or black, with one executive suggesting Edward James Olmos as a compromise, who is neither black nor white, but Latino. The rewriting process would lead Rudnick to quit. He wouldn't hear from Disney again until late 1991, when the final script was sent to him, but it resembled very little of his original idea, and he asked for his name to be removed from the credits. When Disney refused to do that, he suggested a pseudonym. Firstly, R. Chasuble, after Reverend Chasuble, the priest in Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, then simply Goofy, which Disney also didn't like. He chose the name Joseph Howard from a character from a story he'd written, plus his brother's middle name. And that's why Paul Rudnick is not credited as Paul Rudnick, and instead is credited as Joseph Howard. Now, obviously, when Whoopi Goldberg joined the production, the script said that she would lead the choir of nuns, as well as perform as Dolores, the lead singer of the Ronells, in a show in Reno. Goldberg, however, didn't know how to sing. Rather than dub her vocals like for some other characters, Goldberg and Mark Shaman got together, and Shaman taught her how to sing, as she dedicated herself to her singing lessons. Shaman also hired Jennifer Lewis and Charlotte Crossley to play Dolores' Ronells, and they supported Goldberg's vocals and re-recorded some Motown classics that would form the basis of the soundtrack. That doesn't mean Goldberg had an easy time on the movie, though. She and Disney squabbled over everything, including rehearsal schedules, character development, and the direction. Production commenced without a completed script in September 1991, finishing in December 1991, and over the course of filming, no less than half a dozen screenwriters would take turns polishing the script, including Carrie Fisher, Robert Harling, and Nancy Myers. It was a constant battle against time and budget, with screenwriters sometimes writing scenes only a day ahead of production. Sister Act was filmed on location in San Francisco, Reno, and Los Angeles, with the Moonlight Lounge exteriors shot at Nevada Club North Virginia Street, Reno, the interiors at Fitzgerald's Casino just down the road. The Reno police station in the movie was actually Reno's main post office. St. Catherine's Convent was actually St. Paul's Catholic Church in Noe Valley, San Francisco. The production had to dress the surroundings to make it appear run down. The majority of interiors of the church were filmed at the First United Methodist Church in Hollywood, but the main body of the church, in which the choir ends up performing for Pope John Paul II, is the real St. Paul's Catholic Church. Whoopi Goldberg and script doctor Carrie Fisher were friends, and Fisher was also friends with Disney Studios chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg. And there was no love lost between Goldberg and Katzenberg. It was Katzenberg who wanted a black love interest. Goldberg wanted to audition white actors, and Goldberg would regularly call up Fisher to complain about Katzenberg. Fisher suggested she avoid fighting with Katzenberg and suggested she sent him a hatchet for him to bury on both of their behalves. So Whoopi Goldberg did, in fact, send Jeffrey Katzenberg a hatchet, and in return, he sent her a pair of brass balls. As many of the cast were older ladies, Goldberg noticed that as the star, she was treated slightly differently. She noticed some of the women were struggling financially, and clearly they hadn't been compensated for their time in a way they deserved. Goldberg would say in an interview with Vulture that, quote, "The ladies hadn't gotten everything I thought they should have gotten, the nuns. They were older women. They were women who I felt should be able to go and have dinner and not be worried about paying hotels or whatever it was," unquote. This group of women was indeed a sisterhood, and Whoopi Goldberg would take matters into her own hands by getting sick, which shut production down for a couple of days until the matter was sorted, and the older women were compensated accordingly, by which time Goldberg got better. Goldberg denied going on strike for her castmates, instead saying to Vulture, quote, "I got sick, I would never go on strike. But if my coughing and sneezing coincided with our brief problem, but they fixed it and it was great, unquote. More issues would arise after the movie's release too. In 1993, actress Donna Douglas and her partner Kurt Wilson sued the Walt Disney Company, Whoopi Goldberg, Bette Midler, their production companies, and creative artists agency for $200 million, alleging that the movie was based on their book A Nun in the Closet. Douglas and Wilson argued that they had written a screenplay based on the book in 1985, and that it had been sent 3 times in 1987 and 1988 to Disney, Goldberg, and Midler. More than 100 comparisons between the film and the novel/screenplay were cited in the lawsuit as proof of plagiarism. In an effort to win the case, Douglas and Wilson turned down a $1 million settlement offer in 1994. A judge would award in Disney and the other defendants' favour, though. And it would also receive a lawsuit from an actual nun. Former Catholic nun Deloris Blakely, previously known as Sister Noelita Marie, sued Sony Pictures and the Walt Disney Company in November 2011, arguing that Sister Act was based on her 1987 autobiography, The Harlem Street Nun. She claimed that after writing a 3-page synopsis, a movie executive showed interest in the film rights. She sued for breach of contract, misappropriation of likeness, and unjust enrichment. Blakely then dropped the initial lawsuit in January 2012 in order to file a more comprehensive lawsuit with the New York Supreme Court in late August 2012, requesting $1 billion in damages from Disney. The New York Supreme Court dismissed the case with prejudice in early February 2013, with Blakely receiving no money. It is now time to segue somehow into the obligatory Keanu reference of this episode, and if you don't know what that is where I link the movie that I'm featuring with Keanu Reeves for no reason other than he is the best of men. Now, Keanu did attend a Catholic boys' school for a year to play hockey, but he also famously played John Constantine, who is damned to hell for attempting suicide. And the movie Constantine is full of Catholic imagery, possibly some nuns, but honestly, it's been a few years since I watched it. That was for episode 26, all the way back in 2019. But I would highly recommend the movie Constantine. It's a great movie and wholly underrated as well. Now, I cannot talk about Sister Act without talking about the incredible soundtrack to Sister Act. When I rewatched this movie for this episode, because I rewatch all of the movies for all of the episodes, I just sat there with a huge smile on my face, clapping and singing along to the music. Genuinely, I adore this soundtrack so much. And the soundtrack is a medley of classic Motown remixed to be more religious, or Catholic hymns remixed to be more bops, like Hail Holy Queen, which dates back to the Middle Ages. Motown's first female top 40 star, Mary Wells, originated the 1964 hit My Guy, composed by Smokey Robinson, which obviously became My God. Peggy March's 1963 hit I Will Follow Him became a song suitable for introduction to the Pope. Peggy March was only 14 years old when she originally recorded it and became the youngest female artist to have a US #1 single. If My Sister's in Trouble by Lady Soul was the only song uniquely created for the Sister Act soundtrack. The black and white music video also features the film's actors, including Whoopi Goldberg. The score for Sister Act, as I mentioned, was composed by Mark Shaman, and the singing voice for Sister Mary Robert was provided by Andrea Robinson. The soundtrack album was certified platinum in Australia and gold in Canada, Germany, and the US. I have to add that I didn't buy the soundtrack. I recorded it off the TV with a tape recorder, like I did for a lot of movies in the late 80s and early 90s. Sister Act would be released on the 29th of May 1992 in the US, and it would immediately hit #2 at the domestic box office, behind Lethal Weapon 3. It would stay at #2 for 4 weeks in total and would stay in the top 10 for 16 weeks. On its $31 million budget, Sister Act would gross $139.6 million domestically in the US and $92 million internationally, for a total worldwide gross of $231.6 million, becoming the 8th highest grossing film worldwide of 1992. It also became the top video rental of 1993 in the US as well. And obviously, if you're looking for a sweet musical comedy about a witness to a crime hiding out from killers in a convent, there's none better than Sister Act. Or at least that's the summary on Rotten Tomatoes, which has Sister Act at a 73% rating. Sister Act would also receive 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Picture, Musical or Comedy, and Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy for Whoopi Goldberg. It would lose the former to the player and the latter to Miranda Richardson for her role in Enchanted April. Somehow also nominated for Best Actress that year, Regina Davis for A League of Their Own and Meryl Streep in Death Becomes Her. 3 incredible performances in movies from 1992. In 1993, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, was released with Goldberg and much of the original cast returning alongside newcomer Lauryn Hill. Yes, that Lauryn Hill, as well as James Coburn and Broadway icon Cheryl Lee Ralph, among others. While it wasn't as much of a commercial and critical success, Back in the Habit has become a cult classic in recent years, with many notable people coming out and admitting it inspired them to get into music or acting, including artists like Leanne Havas, Janelle Monáe, Jennifer Hudson, and Harry Styles. In December 2020, Goldberg revealed she'd signed on for Sister Act 3, with Tyler Perry serving as producer. In January 2023, during an appearance on the Loose Women talk show, Goldberg mentioned she was holding the part of Mother Superior for Maggie Smith, saying they could shoot whenever was the most convenient for the 2-time Academy Award winner. Maggie Smith unfortunately passed away on the 27th of September 2024, aged 89, and the production adjusted the plan for Sister Act 3 following her death. The script is apparently completed, and Whoopi Goldberg confirmed as much in March 2025, saying she hoped it would happen sometime this year. In the meantime, Sister Act the Musical had a regional premiere in 2006 in Pasadena, California, with the original West End production opening in June 2009 at the London Palladium, starring Patina Miller. Whoopi Goldberg played the Reverend Mother in the West End production of the musical for a few weeks. The stage musical wasn't allowed to use the Motown music, so Alan Menken came and wrote a whole new score for the production. Patina Miller also played Dolores in the Broadway run in 2011, and Cynthia Erivo played Dolores in the UK tour in 2011. Some orders of nuns are becoming extinct, but for now they live on in our popular culture, and the narrative around nuns has shifted over the years. From the wholesome, family-friendly nuns of the 60s and 70s, like Maria from The Sound of Music, or Sister Bertrill in the 1960s sitcom The Flying Nun, or the comedic background character like the singing nun in 1974's Airport 1975, or the non-singing nun in Airplane, the spoofed Airport 1975, amongst others, nuns seem to inhabit, pun intended, multiple genres of film, and now horror seems to be the nun's sanctuary of choice. But horror and the Catholic Church go hand in hand in real life. A lot has happened under the supposed safety and sanctuary of the Catholic Church, with many people reporting decades of sexual abuse in monasteries and convents. There were a range of scandals in America, Ireland, Australia, and elsewhere, dramatised in films like The Magdalene Sisters in 2002 and Philomena in 2013, which mark a decisive turn away from wholesome and happy nuns to convents as places of abuse and neglect. Nevertheless, this is a movie that made me want to be a nun for about 5 minutes, and honestly, this movie still brings me so much joy. I'll admit I love this one more than the sequel. It's just so wholesome. I thought Whoopi Goldberg was the epitome of cool, and when Maggie Smith passed last year, in a career spanning 7 decades, for me, she was the Reverend Mother, and she was Granny Wendy in Hook, and they were what made me fall in love with her. R.I.P. to a legend. Religion can sometimes be an easy target for Hollywood, and Catholicism was only ever something I learned from movies, from people confessing their sins in church to Holy Communion, to thinking convent life was just full of gospel music. And this is your typical traditional values, such as from the Reverend Mother, to the version of contemporary faith. Being a nun for many is an honourable calling, to devote yourself to your faith and to receive genuine joy in humble service to God. And this movie, while being a comedy, doesn't speak down to that. These nuns can be in service to God and their community, and also sing their praises in a modern way. Ultimately, Sister Act is a movie about women caring for other women, on the individual and collective kindness of women, that even if your calling is to God, you still ultimately love and care for other women, that race and sexuality don't come into it. Nobody in this movie cares that Dolores is a black woman. There are no race jokes, no comments. It's not nasty, cruel, or diminishing. And when one of their own is in trouble, the nuns think nothing of putting their lives in danger to help their sister. This movie is about nuns, but more than that, it's about the power of women together. Dolores on her own was in danger, but Dolores sequestered with a group of women is power. And not only that, but put a black woman in charge of the music and amazing things can happen, which just speaks to the decades and decades of white artists taking inspiration/stealing from black artists. Deloris van Cartier could have been Terry van Cartier, a white woman, played impeccably, I'm sure, by Bette Midler, but it wouldn't have had the same cultural impact. To see a black woman in this role made it iconic, not because it was written for a black woman, but because it wasn't written for a black woman. This isn't a culture clash between white women and black women, but a culture clash of Dolores' secular ways and the sisters' more traditional religious ones. And honestly, many movies could learn a lesson from Sister Act in how to depict women, especially women of a certain age. I love this movie with all my heart, but I am really glad I didn't become a nun. It's just not my calling. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Sister Act, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. If you want to get involved and help this podcast grow and reach more people, you could leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. It really does help other people find this podcast. You can tell your friends and family about this podcast or about this episode. And you can also find me across social media at Verbal Diorama, where you can like posts, you can share posts, and you can comment on posts as well. The next episode is quite a big one, actually. It's one that I've been teasing for a little while on social media. And it's one that when I did tease it for a little while on social media, it got quite a strong reaction to how many people were really looking forward to hearing the episode. In 1934, a space adventure comic strip was published, aiming to compete with the already established Buck Rogers. That comic strip was Flash Gordon, and it would go on to become a space opera, influence later comic strips, superheroes, and other space operas, like Star Wars. But in 1980, it became a cult classic movie that is still absolutely incredible to watch today. Join me next episode for the history and legacy of Flash Gordon. I cannot wait to do this episode. And I hope you cannot wait either, but you only have to wait a week, so really not that long. And as I always say, this podcast is free and it always will be free. But because it is not free to make a podcast, this podcast does rely on the generous help from people who enjoy and listen to this podcast. No one is ever under any obligation to contribute to this podcast. I am an independent creator who does everything on her own. I do not have a team of people to help me with editing or social media. I am literally just one person. I do all the research for these episodes on my own as well. And if you do enjoy what I do, and if you have some spare pennies, you could financially support this podcast to be able to continue for the foreseeable future. There are two ways you can do that. You can go to verbaldiorama.com/tips and give a one-off tip. Or you can go to verbaldiorama.com/Patreon and you can join the incredible patrons of this podcast. They are Claudia, Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, So, Kev, Pete, Heather, Danny, Ali, Stu, Brett, Philip M, Michelle, Zenos, Sean, Rhino, Philip K, Adam, Elaine, Kyle, and Aaron. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email verbaldiorama@gmail.com. You can say hello, you can give me feedback or suggestions, or you can go to verbaldiorama.com and you can fill out the little contact form. And you can also find articles that I do at filmstories.co.uk too. And finally,
We are a small congregation this morning. Too many mornings. Something has gone terribly wrong. Where is faith? Where is celebration? Where is everyone? Still, rather than regret the absence of our neighbors, let us rejoice in the fellowship of those present. Our choir mistress, Sister Mary Lazarus, has informed me that our choir, while always superior, has been toiling especially hard on this week's selection. Sister.
Bye.